Soccer fans in a death trap. Lesson 16, Calamities. Chris Parsonage will probably always be a soccer fan, but he may think twice about ever going to another match. For the rest of his life, he will remember April 15, 1989, when an afternoon soccer game turned into a deadly stampede. Chris, the 29-year-old math teacher, was looking forward to Saturday's soccer match at Hillsborough Stadium in Sheffield, England. He lived just outside the city of Liverpool, and he had been excited about the game all week. He was planning to watch Liverpool's team play in the semi-final match for the National Cup. Liverpool fans love their soccer team, so Chris knew the stadium would be crowded. Soccer is tremendously popular all over Europe, and English fans are famous for their team loyalty. But that loyalty has sometimes gotten out of hand. Mobs of supporters have damaged property and started deadly brawls with rival fans. In fact, English soccer fans have been so violent for several years their teams were barred from European competition. Chris Parsonage didn't expect any trouble at Saturday's playoff game. He and two friends arrived at the stadium and began to make their way through the crowded turnstiles. His friends had tickets for seats in the stands, but Chris was headed for the terrace behind the Liverpool goal. It was cheaper than his friends' seats because it had standing room only. Local police and England's Soccer Association knew that soccer matches had a reputation for violence. Liverpool fans were especially prone to brawls, so officials had erected security fences at either end of the field, between each terrace and goal. They hoped the steel mesh would keep Liverpool fans from pouring onto the field to attack the fans of the rival team. Outside the turnstiles, the crowd began to thicken as Liverpool fans gathered at the gate. Most people in the crowd did not have tickets. They came to the match planning to buy them at the door. For some reason, fans of Liverpool's opponent, Nottingham Forest, had been allotted more tickets. So while the rival fans streamed in at their gate, many Liverpool fans were forced to wait outside. Angry and noisy, the fans milled around the gate. The crowd had swollen to 3,000 people by now. Police began to fear a riot. To keep the pressure from building up outside the arena, an officer opened a gate to the stadium. Meanwhile, Chris Parsonage had managed to get through the turnstiles. He walked along the tunnel that led from the gate to the terrace. Nearby, he heard someone mention police had opened gates behind him. He wasn't worried. He said later, "Everyone was pushing forward to get in and see the kickoff, but I had been in the crowds like this before." Confident that he would find a place to stand, Chris just wasn't prepared for the chaos that happened next. He made his way to the terrace and tried to move to a place where he could see the game. He realized that he was trapped. The crowd was so tight he could not move to either side. The situation was getting worse. He felt the pressure building up behind him like the swell of a giant wave. Thousands of fans had now surged through the tunnel. Chris and the people around him were lifted off their feet from the extreme pressure. One of Chris's legs was pulled forward. The other was trapped against a barrier. "I began to scream. I honestly thought my leg would snap," he remembered. "I was panicking." All around him, people were screaming and fainting. He watched in horror as the man in front of him turned blue. There was nothing he could do to help. His arms and legs were pinned by the crowd around him. The fans tried yelling for the police to stop the game. They couldn't scream for long. They had to save their breath. Chris said he struggled to keep his mouth up high so he could keep breathing. At the front of the terrace, hundreds of fans pressed against the steel mesh security fence as the crowd continued to squeeze forward. Some people fell and were trampled. Others were crushed to death against the 10-foot-high immovable fence. Bill Eastwood, a safety expert who was present at the disaster, said there must have been a half-ton of pressure across each person's midriff. Chris Parsonage was lucky. Somehow the surge of the crowd pushed him into an empty seat. He sat there for an hour and a half, unable to walk on his injured leg. He recalled, "I started shaking and crying because I knew very well I could have been dead. I could see all those people being carried away like dolls in a toy shop, with arms hanging all over the place. 94 fans were killed in the stampede. Nearly 200 more were injured. Many of the dead were children and teenagers who had been crushed and suffocated by a crowd of taller adults. Chris Parsonage, who is more than 6 feet tall, believes his height saved his life. Amazingly, many people at the soccer match had no idea fellow fans were being pressed to death. Because the people on the terrace couldn't breathe, they also couldn't scream. The danger wasn't realized until it was too late. Soccer officials, unaware of the tragedy, did not call off the match immediately. The players on the field continued the game for 6 minutes while their fans were being killed in front of them. The tragedy at Sheffield is just one example of the ongoing problem with English soccer crowds. Some researchers believe the stadiums themselves are the cause of many incidents. A number of popular stadiums are small and outdated. Others are built in cramped city neighborhoods where there is no room to organize a crowd. Some people believe if England wants to avoid crowd disasters in the future, the country must invest in larger, more modern stadiums. They will make police security easier and safer, and they will attract families who are now afraid to attend soccer matches. A new stadium won't make Chris Parsonage forget Sheffield. I still wake up crying in the middle of the night and see that guy's face in front of me. At the stadium, I think I was crying because I was alive. Now I don't know. I think I am crying for the dead.